the crossroads of the Ozarks, it's the OGs of podcasting, PID Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and we're in our living room. It's raining outside. The dogs are looking sort of hangdog. And Mom, is it going to rain all day? Well, yes.
We're just going to nap until it stops raining.
Well, it may let up soon. In fact, it sounds like it may have gotten a little lighter. So.
Yeah. Well, we're under a flood watch until Monday now. They've extended it to Monday because of the rain that's fallen.
Being the region, this area, not us in particular, we're way high. If we get flooded. Right,
yeah. So if you see, and by the way, just so if you want to take a look at a map and a weather map and you're concerned about what's happening with that, we're in the southwest corner of the state of Missouri. Mm-hmm. We are actually closer to Little Rock, Arkansas, or Tulsa, Oklahoma, than we are to St. Louis or Kansas City.
Yep.
So, and we'll talk about St. Louis in just a minute because
that's one of the stories.
Friends there and our daughter's there, and of course, last Friday they had a storm there. But first, please take a minute, if you haven't already, to download our app, gilberthouse.org/app or pidradio.com/app. Either one will get you there. iOS, Android, Amazon, Kindle Fire, those are the mobile versions, but you can bring us right to your smart TV. Yes, gasp. Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Google TV, Android TV. We got all the TVs, and so that our video content, Unraveling Revelation, The Armored Sheep, Sharon's new podcast, The Bible's Greatest Mysteries, which is back.
I know, it's exciting. In fact,
Yes.
You and I were just talking about a topic that we're going to be doing on there soon.
Yes, all of those, and you can get to those links for those stores. I mean, if you've got a smart TV, go to their app store, look for the Gilbert House Ministries app, or you can follow a link, at least for Roku and Amazon Fire TV, from Gilbert House or pidradio.com, gilberthouse.org/app, pidradio.com/app.
By the way, if you're listening to this and thinking, boy, Derek's voice sounds a little hoarse, there's a lot of pollen and other things like that in the air.
Cool spring, yes.
But also whatever autoimmune disorder, and the doctors that he works with are still sort of, okay, could be this, could be that.
Right.
They think they've zeroed in on it. We'll tell you more about that later, but that may be part of what's going on.
Right. And I thank you for your concern, by the way. We've been getting emails over the last couple of weeks, many of them related to my vocal issues, because it's been clear over the last several months, actually, that I often sound like I've got a cold. When I don't, it's just that whatever is going on, it could be allergies. Again, we've had a very long spring, so there's a lot of pollen in the air, but it could also be related to the autoimmune issue. But even had an email from an oncology nurse asking about you.
Oh.
And it's possible because she posted this note to our YouTube channel, which, by the way, is youtube.com/@GilbertHouse. Please subscribe, share, click the bell for notifications, hit the like button, and asked if you were all right, because she's an oncology nurse and she was concerned. And this it was on an older video where you were talking about your weight loss.
Oh.
And the weight loss goes back almost 10 years now. We started, actually, you were the one who really started this process.
I lost well over 100 pounds, about 120 at my skinniest. I've put back on a few of those pounds, which I think is probably best at my age. I'm 72. So right now I'm weighing in at about 129, 130, somewhere in there, and I'm 5'5", so that's, for my age, that's great. But I've kept it off. I used to be like 240, 245. So I lost the weight in about a year.
Yeah.
And I completed that weight loss journey in 2016, fall of 2016. So it's almost, how?
9 years?
9 years, yeah.
Yeah, and kept it off. Yeah. And it wasn't through any kind of radical diet. It wasn't keto, carnivore, whatever. It was just eliminating the white foods, processed flour, white sugar, things like that, focusing more on
white potatoes, things like that. And we still occasionally now will have stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just before you and I lost weight, we were eating those things daily. We had a Saturday ritual where I would make what we call Gilbert potatoes.
Yeah.
And it was a big old frying pan with lots of potatoes cut up in it with onions and sometimes bacon. And
Right, yep.
we would put cheese and all sorts of stuff over it, sour cream, just make these, and they were really good.
But a lot of carbs too, junk carbs,
was the
salty
junk,
snacks, ice
yeah.
cream, things like that.
Oh,
All the
my
things that
gosh.
are just you really, really need to eliminate if you're going to try. So there's
We
no
just don't.
secret formula. Because as Sharon's been asked a number of times over the years if she would write a book on this, and it's like you could put it on one page, really.
It's such a simple thing.
Yeah.
Cut out the white stuff, white bread, white flour, white
Right.
potatoes, stuff like that. Also, just smaller plates. So you
Smaller
have
plates.
and lots of water.
Lots of water.
Lots of water.
When you look at some of those older videos from when we first got to the Ozarks back in 2015 and then compare that to now, because you and I were almost the same weight
Yeah, I
when
know.
we moved here.
I know, and you're a lot taller than I am.
Yeah, I'm about 6 or 7 inches taller than you are. And also being male, heavier build as is God's design.
Yeah.
I dropped about 40 pounds to start. But over the last 18 months, beginning when we first got Grace, November of 23, we were going out and patrolling the perimeter of the property about 3 times a day, and that's about 1.5 miles of walking a day. And I dropped about 10 pounds there. But then when this autoimmune thing really started to kick in after the aneurysm surgery, the aneurysm, it was an abdominal aneurysm. It was small, was not at risk of.
That was found because of your complaints about your foot drop and things
Right,
like that.
yeah, this starting to affect my balance. Hey, maybe it's vascular. Let's send you out for testing. So that put an end to the wandering around the property. But then my weight loss picked up again.
Yeah.
So over the last 18 months, I dropped 20 pounds without trying, and I was down as low as 172. I was talking to my sister about that yesterday and said I'd gotten down to 172. She said, hey, great. I said, no.
No, not great.
No, because I hadn't weighed 172 since probably sophomore year of high school.
At your age.
Right, yeah. 185 is where I want to be.
Yeah.
Now, the funny thing is, and this actually made her laugh, as part of what we're going through, my doctors put me on a regimen that includes testosterone, because there's recent research just the last 5-10 years that testosterone plays a key role in the regrowth of myelin, which is sort of like the insulation around the wiring, the nerves. And that's what my body is attacking, which is why I've lost control of my feet.
Yep.
And after starting the testosterone, I went from 178 to 185 in 5 days, 7 pounds in 5 days. I did some quick math in my head. So I said, at this rate, Sandy, I'm going to weigh 545 pounds by next spring. And she laughed. But
Now the good news, I looked this up, and apparently that is not an uncommon side effect, that in the first few weeks, the person will gain a little bit of weight, but then you're gaining muscle for the most part.
Right.
And then after that, it will level off.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. And you're very faithful about reporting to your doctor about on a weekly basis or big things that change. And you're also keeping a journal, which I think is really important.
Yeah, there's a little app in the iOS for the iPhone that allows me very easily to just track what's going on. And so each day, excuse me, as I encounter changes, and I track my weight on a daily basis so that I can document, okay, here's where I started the testosterone. And you can see within 5 days, I went back up to where I was, and which is the weight I want to stay at.
Right.
So anyway,
I think it's a good weight for you, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel good, and I'm happy at that weight. And I think for my height, it's a healthy weight.
You're what, 63 now? Yeah.
Yep, 63.
Yeah.
So yeah, as is our want, when you get to a certain age, you spend lots of time talking about your medical issues. So we'll maybe touch on that again toward the end of the program.
But there are other things going on in the world that
younger
we
listeners
have
are like,
to.
get on with it. Well,
I know. You
wait
can
till you
always
get to our age, kid.
Scroll past it.
Just wait till you get to our age. You sit around with all your relatives sitting. Oh yeah, and then
but because people have worried.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I'm wearing, if you've seen Skywatch TV, I'm wearing a hat because I'm sensitive to light because of possible Sjogren's. It's sort of destroyed some of my oil cells in my oil glands in my eyelids, which help to keep your cornea nice and moist. So it makes super dry eye and very photophobic.
And by the way, there have been some emails I've received. People have noticed the weight drop and ask. I said, Derek, you're looking gaunt. I was like,
Yeah.
well, yep.
Yeah.
Was not intentional, but it's because...
You need a fuller beard.
Yeah, I did a L.A. Marzulli's program this past week, and he mentioned that from the previous month, he said, look like you put on some more weight. It's like, well, just let my beard grow out a little bit. But yeah, I did put on enough weight so that by next spring I'll weigh 545 pounds.
No, that's a joke, people. So
I am joking. I will not, Anyway, St. Louis, last week Friday, a week ago Friday, as we're recording this on Saturday, May 24th. So it would have been the 16th of May. A deadly tornado went through, and actually there were a couple. There was one that was went through Somerset and London in Kentucky, and nearly 24 people died in that tornado. That was a monster. It was on the ground for like 55 miles.
Yeah, and let me say this about London, Kentucky. There was a story that came out before you go back to St. Louis. A story that came out that was very poignant. Husband and wife who were in their home, and the tornado, they were sheltering, but they could hear the tornado barreling down on them, and they, as one would, when you think it could be this is our last moments together, they embraced.
Yeah.
And then there was a debris that fell on them. There was glass and everything, and the debris fell on them, and it severed both of their arms in the same place. So because they were embracing, she lost one side of her, and he lost the other side. And they showed them in the hospital, loving on one another. You know, it's a very poignant story. Neighbors, they started shouting for help, and after the tornado went through, and neighbors came to help them and put tourniquets very quickly on their arms, and were able to save their lives. But yeah, that is remarkable. The sound of the tornado is something you won't forget. We've heard it twice. I've heard it twice anyway. I don't know if you heard it when you were in Madison. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It does sound like a train coming up on you.
Years ago when Madison got hit by the tornado, Madison,
74.
Indiana. But once here, when we had an EF1 that went about a mile south of us between here and Cape Fear, and then back in Charleston, when we lived back in Illinois, Illinois, there was one where we heard, it was no rain, just heard that noise. It sounded like a train off in the distance. And then it turned out later that a tornado had passed between Charleston and Villa Grove, Illinois, which is south of Champaign.
And I think
due north of Champaign.
I think I told you about this at the time when we were living in Columbia, Missouri, and you were on the air as a radio talk show host. And I was driving back from St. Louis. I can't remember why I went there. I was driving back, and I may have gotten on the phone with you, but I could see the tornado. I heard it, but I could see it. And I was listening to the radio, and the weather guy was saying, there's a tornado in our area. And I thought, yeah. Now, it was going parallel with me. And it was maybe a mile away, but I could see it churning up. It was in an agricultural field.
Well, the one that hit St. Louis a week ago Friday afternoon, May 16th. There's some just incredible video, and there's an image that's been shared on social media that was taken from one of the west-facing windows of the St. Louis Arch, showing the tornado touching down near Forest Park, which is the big park in St. Louis. It's where the World's Fair was held 100 years ago. And it went through North St. Louis, crossed the Mississippi River over into Granite City, Illinois.
That's unusual. They don't often jump over a big body of water like that.
And ended up at Edwardsville, very close to the campus of Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville. The tornado siren, by the way, they say that some 5,000 buildings in St. Louis have been damaged. 5 people were killed, 38 wounded, injured. Mayor of St. Louis, name is Cara Spencer, said that they estimate the damage at around $1 billion in damage, but the tornado sirens never went off. They were never activated.
That's a big metro area, and there is no reason why they should have gone off had the person in charge been doing what she was supposed to be doing. And I'm not talking about the mayor.
No. I mean, if you've got a weather app on your phone, you can get the alerts from the National Weather Service. Mm-hmm. That's not, a problem. But there are many people who don't, or if you've got your phone in a place. I mean, there are times when I can't hear the alerts on my phone if I'm carrying it on an outside pocket, or if the noise around me, if I'm outdoors and the noise is too loud, you can't necessarily hear it. The sirens are hard to ignore when the tornado sirens go off.
Mm-hmm. And this person we're talking about should have had alerts on her weather app.
Clearly.
That told her what was going on, because that was her job.
Yeah. The City of St. Louis Emergency Management Agency, or what they call CEMA or CEMA. And I'm looking for her name. Last name is Russell.
Ms. Russell.
Yeah. KSDK's story is, they jumped right to it, and I guess they assume you know what her first name is. Sarah Russell. This may be apropos of nothing, but on her social media, she reportedly uses they, them as pronouns. But
look,
again, that may be apropos of nothing.
Well, exactly. A lot of individuals are doing that, and some are doing it simply because they think that it makes them cool and they'll get more followers.
I guess. Sarah Russell, who's the commissioner of CEMA, went on camera to explain why the sirens didn't sound. And her explanation leaves something to be desired. Basically, she said, we have a small team. We normally work just regular business hours, and so we weren't in the office. The tornado hit at about 5:30 Friday afternoon. But the Weather Service had been warning for hours before that there was a weather system brewing that was capable of producing tornadoes and was heading right towards St. Louis.
The day before.
Yeah.
Those who watch weather were showing weather.com, many of the YouTubers. I mean, it was obvious that a big deal was brewing, a big supercell.
Weather conditions were conducive to a tornado developing. And in fact, this tornado was an EF3 on the Fujita scale, which goes from 0 to 5. 5 is the most powerful. So 3, pretty powerful tornado. At some points, reportedly, was as much as a mile wide. When you look at drone footage of the path of the tornado and you can see where trees were just flattened, the buildings flattened along the path of the tornado. Many of the brick homes in North St. Louis heavily damaged, or just completely flattened. Anyway, Sarah Russell said, we're a small office, we've got a small team, and we weren't in the office. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what she said. We weren't in the office, so we couldn't push the button.
That's not going to really play in the long run, because given the situation, they should have called everybody and the team comes in. Yeah. If it's just 3 people, you come in.
Now, here's the thing. Local media in St. Louis is now looking at this and reporting that an audit was done a year ago, last year, and had outlined concerns that the office was short-staffed and that there were vulnerabilities in the city's emergency alert system. The audit found, I'm quoting now, a deficiency in the separation of duty in employees' responsibilities, which hiring new staff would eliminate, end quote. In other words, they didn't have enough people to do the job. Now, according to what I've read, there's supposed to be a protocol in place, which Sarah Russell herself designed back in 2021. It was supposed to be that if CEMA, the city's emergency management agency, wasn't available to push the siren button, the fire department was supposed to do it. But apparently the protocol is written in such a way that it's not clear that that's what was supposed to happen. So the fire department, which is staffed 24/7, there's always somebody on duty at the fire department, didn't know, apparently, that it was their responsibility because it was after work hours on a Friday. I mean, this is horrific. They installed.
I hear litigation papers
Yes.
being filled out.
There are 60 sirens across. Oh, and here's the other thing. Even if the fire department had tried to push the button, the button's not working.
What?
At the fire department. Their system was found to be non-functional. So even if they had tried to do it,
Oh,
the
my
sirens
goodness.
wouldn't have gone.
I'm sorry, but here's the thing. Missouri just recently had a whole day
Yes.
where it was a tornado alert practice day.
Right. And the sirens would go off. And in fact, they go off once a month here. We've got a siren just up here on the corner.
Exactly. They test it every month.
Yeah, it's like, what, it was the first Tuesday, first Wednesday, I forget what it is. But
It was like 10 o'clock. What was that?
Siren goes off. Oh, it's 10 a.m., first week in the month. Okay, all right, just a test. They've got 60 sirens that were installed 25 years ago in St. Louis. And it's supposed to cover the entire city. So now our daughter, who lives in the vicinity of Tower Grove Park, which is south of the area that was hit, south and east, she said she never heard sirens go off. Well, now we know why. It's because they didn't. But she said she was watching on her phone. She's very tech savvy and paying attention to the weather. And she said, I never went down to the basement because I could see it was going to go north of where I'm at. She doesn't like going into the basement. It's an older building and there are a lot of spiders down there. Frankly, I'd be more afraid of the tornado than the spiders. But,
Me too.
Yeah. But she was at least aware and alert of what was going on. There may have been some people who were not so aware of what was happening because the storm blew up in a hurry, even though the Weather Service had said, be prepared for this. But for SEMA to say, look, it's not our fault because we weren't in the office. Sarah Russell is now on administrative leave while they investigate this.
Well, and she seems to be throwing the fire department under the bus.
Well, kind of. But then the mayor, who ultimately has got to take responsibility for saying, look, when I took office as mayor, this is one of the things we should have addressed. Instead, she said, I'm taking responsibility going forward for making it the responsibility of the fire department. So she's not taking responsibility for the failure that just happened and maybe might have saved some of the lives of the 5 people who passed.
Might have, yeah.
The audit that was done last year, and again, this audit done a year ago, where they could have fixed this a year ago when they did the audit about the failures of SEMA in St. Louis, does not have a policy and procedure manual that includes detailed content on job title and responsibilities. So anyway, going forward, hopefully things will be corrected, but it was just astonishing to see that explanation. We have a small office. It was the same kind of response.
Well, I know
that the fire department, the head of the fire department in Los Angeles, after their fires broke out, said, we're underfunded, we're understaffed, it's not my fault. That's basically the response you got from the Emergency Management Agency in St. Louis.
Look,
we're underfunded, understaffed, it's not my fault.
If you are part of an emergency management agency of any kind, whether it's fire or tornado or whatever, you have drills and you make sure your equipment is working.
Yeah.
And that if it looks like there's something that may happen, you have people in the office. In fact, I would say have people in the office at all times.
Right.
That's the nature of emergencies. They often happen when you least expect them.
Right. And to just say, well, you know, we're only there from 9 to 5, so sorry.
Well, as you and I know, we've been watching news for decades. And the sad truth is that many large metro areas, Los Angeles, St. Louis, Chicago, Kansas City, New York City, Boston, they often have lots of money coming in, but not exactly well spent.
Right. Yeah, and there's some cities that are finding themselves in what can best be described as a doom loop. City of Chicago being one of those, where taxes are so high that businesses and citizens are fleeing the city, and so the city's response is to raise taxes on who's left, which forces more businesses and citizens to flee the city, which Yeah, sorry, that's not the way to
No,
reverse the decline.
Not at all. You're putting pressure on the few people who've decided, the ones who are on your side, and decided to stay, or have no choice.
But to stay. Yeah, yeah, and because now we've got businesses that are fleeing the city. Mayor Brandon Johnson of Chicago wants to open up city-owned grocery stores. That'll work well.
Oh yeah, because food deserts.
Food deserts, pharmacy deserts.
Speaking of pharmacy, we're going to take a left turn here.
Okay, good.
One of the stories that I shared on X this morning, and by the way, I think Derek always puts where you can follow us.
Check the show notes below.
Yep. I put a lot of stuff at X, and I will often put a poll there. So, please answer the poll, share your opinions with me. I love it. Moderna had received quite a bit of money from the U.S. government to create a new mRNA-based double-valent vaccine. And that means it would go after 2 strains of COVID. They've decided to no, we're not going to do that. We're going to discontinue that because, RFK, we don't like him. RFK continues anti-vax campaign. That's why they said, it's like, we're not going to play. As long as he's on the field, we're not playing.
Yeah. Politics is a blood sport. It is a dirty game because there's a lot of money involved.
And I'm very glad that you never went into politics.
Yeah. And when you're a kid, especially in our age group, you're raised believing in truth, justice in the American way.
Yep.
And anyone can grow up to be president. And as you get older, you find out, that's not really true. And you probably don't want that job anyway, which is where we are. You realize you need a person with a certain type of personality who thrives in that sort of pressure. I would not. That's not me. I'm not by nature confrontational. Donald Trump thrives on that. And yes, I get it. If you're not a fan of his personality because he's brash, he comes across as perhaps a little self-absorbed, whatever. But I'm sorry, but that's the kind of personality that you need in that job because anyone else, a nice guy, if you will, like I like to think I'm a nice guy.
You are a nice guy.
We would be chewed up and spit out.
You'd never make it through the campaign.
Never make it through the campaign. They would find something, and if they couldn't find something to use against you, they'd make something up.
Or they'd tell you to lie.
Or they would tell you to lie, right?
Exactly.
We need you to do this. Hey, look, if you want to win, to do good things, you're going to have to do this bad thing to get the job so you can do good things. And
in order to get the campaign funds we need, you need to agree that this donor is going to be able to get some sort of sweetness in the future. So make a little promise. That's all you need to do, and we'll get that $10 million.
Right. Well, what you got is Moderna saying, okay, we're going to take our marbles and go home. Just remember that Moderna made something like $20 billion in 2021 by selling, we can't even call it a vaccine because they changed the definition of what vaccine means. It no longer means something that prevents disease or the spread of disease. It's something that maybe helps you don't get as sick and maybe slows the spread a little bit.
There is no way to know. What is known, and this is sort of connected in a way, there is a reportedly more transmissible, highly transmissible version of SARS-CoV-2 that has started up in Thailand, I think.
Yeah.
And look, highly transmissible, oftentimes that means that it's starting to get weaker. And the admission from, if you dig into these stories, is, the people who have sadly passed away from this particular version of SARS-CoV-2 are in a much older age group and have comorbidities. Yeah,
and this was known fairly early on. It's
just being reported now, like, oh, look what happened.
Well, there was a story I reported on this week regarding the what the Biden administration knew about the vaccine, or let me say the serum It's like, it's not really a vaccine. What they did about it, what did they know and when did they know it? Well, they knew fairly early on that it was causing myocarditis. And this came out in the hearings held this past week by Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson.
Which is the real reason I think Moderna has backed off.
Yes, I think you're exactly right. Johnson, who's the chair of the Senate Subcommittee on Investigations, who's been very critical of the whole rollout of the mRNA vaccines. And by the way, if you go back and look at our archives on our app or on the TV app into the Sci Friday archives, go back to about January or February of 2020, because we were talking about this then, and there were a couple of episodes that got yanked off of certain video platforms because we dared to suggest that maybe this isn't going to work.
Well, yeah,
anyway,
we said some things that have since been validated, but
yes,
it wasn't liked at the time.
Right. Anyway, in February of 2021, which is not long after this was rolled out, Israeli health officials let the CDC know of, and I quote, large reports of myocarditis, particularly in young people. Now, myocarditis is inflammation of the heart muscle. You don't need to be a doctor to know that that's a bad thing.
Also, pericarditis was happening.
Right,
And that's
fluid around.
The fluid, exactly.
And they knew this. This was following the Pfizer injections. This was just 2.5 months after the vaccine, after the jab had received the emergency use authorization. They let the CDC know about this. CDC was going to release a health notice to doctors around the country, but the Biden administration stepped in and said, no, don't do that. They didn't want to put that out there.
And now you have to put that warning on the container, the box,
yes,
where you have that serum and or the pre-filled jabs.
Right. But this is only just now coming out like 4 years down the road after this was rolled out. The CDC knew. The White House stepped in and said, don't send out that warning. Instead, they sent out talking points to Dr. Anthony Fauci and others in the administration to say, well, these reports, they're few and far between, and the symptoms usually go away without any kind of medical attention. And then by April, the Centers for Disease Control were reviewing myocarditis data from Israel and the Department of Defense. Because remember, the DOD, under Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, forced soldiers to take it, soldiers, airmen, sailors to take it or else.
And there were some who successfully litigated to avoid that. It took a while, though.
Took a while, and many of them lost their careers for several years. Now they're reinstated with back pay. But by the end of the month of April 2021, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, or VAERS, had recorded 2,926 deaths, nearly half of which occurred within 3 days of their injection. And yet, we were still told it was safe and effective.
Let me just remind you at this point, please download our app, because just having this conversation,
yes,
even now, could get us canceled.
That is very true.
And if it does, then we're just going to say what we feel, what we believe to be truth.
Yeah, and this is being reported by the corporate media, so this is kind of hard to ignore at this point. But even though what we were saying 5 years ago was reported in corporate media, and we still got yanked.
I know. By the way, we have, someone did ask. Neither one of us has been jabbed.
Yes. Somebody asked about that because I'd mentioned that yesterday I was just really fatigued, and so I did not do a 5 and 10 report for Skywatch TV, and somebody had asked, were you jabbed? No, I was not.
We both had it, though.
Right.
And we have to blame L.A. Marzulli for that.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
Brought it home from a conference where we both spoke, because L.A. got sick as well.
He got sick, so no, I'm not blaming him. We love L.A.
Absolutely. But to my mind, the most shocking revelation from Senator Johnson's hearing was this. An OBGYN named Dr. James Thorpe testified to the committee. And he said that the COVID shots mirrored the effects of chemical abortion drugs. Here's what he said. He referenced a study published in the New England Journal of Medicine. So this is a peer-reviewed study. This is not coming from a right-wing conspiracy theory website.
Right.
claimed among women who'd received the injection a 12.6% miscarriage rate. But when you isolate the data for women vaccinated in the first trimester, the first 90 days of pregnancy, the miscarriage rate was 82%. 82%. And they were telling women, get this, it'll protect your unborn child. No, it aborted the unborn children.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
There should be people who go to prison for this.
Yes. Now, let me just jump in. And if you are unfamiliar with the trials that are done when there is a vaccine candidate or any kind of pharmaceutical candidate, it has to go through a number of stages. And one of those stages is animal studies. And then if it passes through the animal studies, and it has to be certain animals that have a high affinity of well, they're much like a human being. In other words, okay, I can test it in this one, and they're going to react the way a human being would in most cases. And then you start the human studies, the human trials. And it's not very often, in fact, it's rare that you even get women of, what am I trying to say? Childbearing age. Thank you very much. Childbearing age. It's usually young men.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of drugs that have not been tested for whether or not it is going to pass through the placenta to the child.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's going to pass through the blood-brain barrier.
Yeah.
There are a lot of studies that are just not done.
And they certainly weren't done in this case because Operation Warp Speed rushed these from the announcement of President Trump. And again, on Sci Friday, when it first came out, you said, number one, there's no way they'll keep up with an RNA-based virus like this because it mutates too quickly to keep up, and the virus will never be targeting.
It'll be useless within months.
Right. But number two, mRNA technology had never been approved for a human trial before, much less a wide-scale rollout.
The tech had been around for a couple of decades and always been turned down.
And suddenly, within a year, these were being pumped into the arms of millions of people around the world. And I reported as early as 2022 on 5 and 10 that there was data showing that in countries with high percentages of vaccinated people, the birth rates had showed like a catastrophic collapse with no explanation. Yeah. People are standing, the health officials standing, scratching their heads. Gee, what could this be? What's changed over the last year that's caused the birth rates to drop so suddenly in places like Taiwan and what was the other one? Sweden was another.
Well, I think that this data may be one of the reasons that the FDA has now said they're not going to require COVID vaccines anymore.
Yes, just this past week they said
we're not going to recommend them.
No longer recommended for healthy people, right? Because as we learned, once data started coming in, the infection fatality rate of this was slightly higher than the seasonal flu that comes through. Yeah,
it went through the typical coronavirus track, and it got weaker and weaker, and now it's like a cold.
Yeah, so
not a pleasant cold. We'll say that. Many people who get it, I've had some colds in my many decades of life that hang on and have croupy sounding kind of coughs. Others that are what Mom always called, stomach virus that come along, and so not a very pleasant week or two, however long you got it. So I know that there's some people right now that live in this area who've been dealing with whatever viruses are going around. So it isn't a walk in the park, but it isn't life-threatening.
No.
Unless you have comorbidities or you're much older.
Right, and that was the thing. People who tended to expire after catching that virus more often than not had a comorbidity. People who were healthy, I mean, even the two of us, even though we're technically in the age group that we're supposed to be vulnerable to it, we had a few days of high fever and then it was gone. Yeah. Now, that may have been what triggered my autoimmune issues, because it was about 4 months later I started noticing the neuropathy and so on.
We really don't know.
But we don't know
what it is.
But it wasn't from the jab. And the jab, boy, I'll tell you what, again, there need to be some people, because the fact that the CDC knew about it and was told to stand down by the White House, don't tell doctors that, hey, there's maybe a higher risk of myocarditis, and suddenly you're seeing young, healthy soccer players dropping on the pitch.
Yeah. By the way, isn't it great that Otto Penn was signing so many wonderful pardons?
Yeah, we need to break, but when we come back, let's talk about how the media has suddenly awakened from a 5-year slumber to discover, hey, who knew Joe Biden was not all there?
Oh, I know.
Oh, only those of us who are watching. More straight ahead when PID Radio continues.
In the days of old, giants walked the earth. Scripture tells how David defeated Goliath, how angels served the Creator, and how the serpent deceived God's image bearers. The prophecies foretold of a coming Savior, one that would reach across the veil and set the captives free. Featuring Derek Gilbert,
UFO True Believers, the Ancient Aliens Prophets,
Carl Gallups,
the cherubim, the living creature,
and Micah Van Huss.
The story of the giant of Kandahar.
At the Mysteries of the Bible Verse event in Carmel, Indiana, June 13th and 14th.
Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. Your voice is getting deeper and deeper.
Yes.
By the way, I'm going to ask Derek if he can can you add a photo to the video? I know that because it's a podcast, but I may just put it on X. The dogs right now, they look so super cute, especially Glory.
Yeah.
I don't know that you can really see her from here, honey, but I'll send you the picture later.
I can imagine.
I took a picture of them.
She's got her left leg over Grace's back. It's
so funny.
So they're talking about us now. Wake up.
I know.
Quick.
Do you girls want to go outside? Because it's not raining very hard right now.
Yeah, let's go.
So, be sure to download our app, by the way, and go to Israel with us.
gilberthouse.org/app. And when you're there on the app, make sure you tap on the calendar section for upcoming events. We got 2 sections under the calendar. One is for upcoming Bible studies, so you'll know where we are in the Bible. And this coming weekend, I guess, yes, tomorrow we're going to be doing First Enoch again, back in First Enoch. But you'll also get a list of upcoming conferences we'll be speaking at and information on our Israel tour, October 19th through 30th of 2025. Our special guest joining us in Israel, Carl Teichgrib, author, lecturer, researcher, and somebody who'll be going to Israel for the very first time. So
I know. I cannot wait to, it's so much fun to watch through the eyes of someone who's never experienced an event before.
Right.
And so we'll get to watch Carl and Leanne experience Israel for the first time, but we'd love to experience it with you as well. So please come along with us. And if you've already been with us one time, come back.
We will take you places that most other tours will not. The historical locations of the crucifixion, the burial tomb of Jesus, which of course is the site of the resurrection, and where we believe the historical location of Jesus' baptism is, which is not where, I don't think anybody else has proposed this site.
I don't think so either, and it makes a whole lot of sense, and we're not the only ones that think that. Doug Van Dorn, who went with us a couple of years ago, he also thinks that that's very likely to be it. Do you want me to turn that back on?
Oh, I can get it. I've got a heating pad on my left shoulder dealing with some bursitis. It may be part of the, there we go, timer. There we go.
Yeah, the doctors think that may be some sort of form of lupus. There are lots of types of lupus, but this one may have essentially rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah, calling it neuropsychiatric.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that he's imagining it. It has to do with other things.
Or that I'm going crazy.
I think it's a very bad way to name it.
Right,
personally.
right. But what it means is it manifests in joint pain and some neurological issues, as opposed to attacking inner organs like lupus can.
Yes, exactly. And that includes, in fact, you have meningitis. So that's part of the neuropsychiatric.
Probably, yes. So anyway, Israel information at our website, also on the app, of course, but at the website, gilberthouse.org/travel. We'll go to Gilgal Rephaim, what they call Israel's Stonehenge. Aaron Lipkin just posted a little video that we recorded there a couple of years ago about that.
Yeah, and we've got other videos that you can watch. We've been sharing them on our YouTube channel, but also over at Substack, I think.
Yep, and our Substack account. Please subscribe to our Substack channel because we're putting everything there basically now. So not only our content, but excerpts from our books as well, releasing 3 of those a week and going through the second coming of Saturn right now. I think after that I'll go back and do Veneration because did Bad Moon Rising and Great Inception already. So anyway, we're releasing the content because we don't want anything. And by the way, at Substack, many independent journalists will post articles or previews, and then you have to pay and subscribe. You can donate through Substack if you like, but there's nothing behind the paywall there.
Yeah.
So all of the content is there for you to watch or read as you prefer.
Yep. And by the way, I have a personal Substack, and I set it up primarily so, just logged in and created an account, which apparently creates a Substack thing for you. I did that so I could read and subscribe to other Substack providers and content creators. But apparently a couple of you have been kind enough to subscribe to mine. I apologize that there's not been anything there. I just recently got the notice that, hey, you got subscribers. So I'm going to try to do something there. So forgive me for that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Substack, by the way, has its own app, and you can download and then read in the app on a mobile device, and that's a very convenient way of getting it. But it actually has become a very popular blogging platform, also independent journalist platform, and a lot of you have been subscribing to read the articles and leaving some nice comments.
And we do appreciate that. Again, subscription, it's zero.
Yeah.
But if you want to donate that way, then we thank
truly
you for
appreciate that.
Do you think Otto Penn has a Substack account?
Well, and is Otto Penn related to Autopilot from the airplane movie?
I know, that is the question.
Otto Penn, the Otto Penn, was first used by Barack Obama. He was in Hawaii and needed to sign something, and so they used the Otto Penn to put his signature on a document. There was a legal opinion that was issued by the White House counsel under George W. Bush that said, this is legal. This counts for the president actually signing the bill. I don't know that George W. Bush ever used the Otto Penn, but it was his White House counsel that wrote that opinion. Barack Obama was the first one to use it. Now, there was a story that came out about a year ago where Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, in January of 24, went in to talk to Joe Biden about a piece of legislation to send more billions of dollars to Ukraine. And he said he told reporters later that he had asked President Biden why the White House had put a freeze on new permits for the export of liquefied natural gas. Now, if you don't recall the story, Europe is in desperate need of energy sources because the Nord Stream gas pipeline, which was piping natural gas from Russia to Germany, and they were supposed to open a second Nord Stream pipeline. Russia was sending it to Germany. It was plentiful. Russia by far and away leads the world in proven reserves of natural gas, and it's cheap. It gave Germany and then Western Europe, by extension, access to cheap energy. And then suddenly, mysteriously, the Nord Stream pipelines blew up. Who did it? Nobody knows. Although award-winning investigative journalist Seymour Hersh, who broke the story about the My Lai massacre back during the Vietnam era, reported that his sources were telling me it was U.S. Navy divers, not SEAL team, but U.S. Navy divers from a salvage facility in Pensacola were used to go down, plant the explosives, and blow up the pipelines. Now, why would the United States do that? I don't know, unless the United States,
the early blame was put on Russia.
It was.
Which
Russia
makes
blew
no
up its own
sense.
pipeline, which makes no sense because, right, Russia was earning a lot of money selling gas to Western
At
Europe.
a time when they were under sanctions.
Yeah. And in fact, they're still selling a lot of oil and gas to Western Europe. They're just sending it through India, and India is tacking on a markup. So Europeans have had to spend more money to run their businesses, heat their homes than they were, 5 years ago because of this. Anyway, Johnson asked Biden why, if there's an opportunity now to sell more liquefied natural gas, are we stopping the export? And the reason Johnson was interested is because he's from Louisiana, where they've got these LNG terminals to load gas onto tankers to send across to Europe. Biden said, we didn't do that. And Johnson said, well, yes, sir, you signed this executive order stopping. No, I didn't do it. And Johnson was concerned. He told reporters, I don't think President Biden knows what he's doing. Well, it appears now that he didn't know what he's doing because this new book that just dropped this past week, Jake Tapper of CNN, Alex Thompson of Axios, the book called Original Sin, based on interviews, they say, with a couple hundred insiders inside the White House, Democrats, in other words, said that they knew that President Biden was not really cognitively capable of doing the job, and they covered it up. They worked real hard to cover it up. And that there were people in Congress, people on his staff who were concerned. He doesn't seem to know where he is, what he's doing. He seems to be unaware. He didn't recognize George Clooney as probably the most recognized actor in Hollywood, or one of them, at a fundraiser that Clooney was hosting for him last year before Biden dropped out of the race. Biden didn't know who he was. So who was signing all those bills? If Biden didn't, again, it's Otto Penn, which raises a really interesting question. Because President Trump has said they're going to investigate this and see who signed all these bills, who signed all those pardons. And if it was the Otto Penn, and if, according to this book,
Do you want to go outside?
the reports are accurate that Biden really didn't know what was being done in his name, are those
Legal.
executive orders, pardons, and pieces of legislation that were signed actually legal?
I agree, Gloria. They shouldn't be legal. Here's the thing. If the president, say, has an impaired right-handed president, then Otto Penn is legal. If the president is aware of it,
yes, and gives
but
his
if
permission.
he's not, if someone else pushes the button, it's
Right.
not.
And again, this was reported a year ago, and of course the corporate media is like, oh, Johnson's just a Republican. He's just pushing this conspiracy theory. Which I think the other question here is this, just to hit the bottom button there.
You girls hungry?
Yep, that muted it.
Okay.
The other question here is this. Why is this coming out now? We can tell you with some certainty that books don't write themselves really, really fast. I mean, even if you were a very prolific writer, we are just a little over 4 months, January, February, March, April, May. We're literally like 4 months from the inauguration of President Trump. You might be able to write a book. You could write a book in 4 months' time. But getting the book edited doesn't happen overnight. That takes some time. And then we can also tell you with some knowledge of how the process works, you don't get a book to the printer and back from the printer in less than 4 to 6 months. Now, maybe a major publishing house will... I think you need to hit it again there. Well, let me look at the receiver here to see. We're trying to mute to make sure that the extraneous noise isn't... Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So you're seeing me
Yep.
Okay. I had to go feed the dogs.
So anyway, what we found at Defender Publishing was that about, say, 5-6 years ago, before COVID, you could get a book back from the printer in 4 to 6 weeks. Now it's 4 to 6 months. Like I said, we're only 4 months down the road from Trump's inauguration.
Right, and part of the reason for that is, frankly, I don't think that there are that many printers out there.
Right.
It's a very expensive setup, but paper shortages is one of the big reasons.
Yeah. Even if you're willing to pay a premium to get moved up in the line on the printing schedule, there's only so much they can do. Here's the other thing. If, as they claim, the book Original Sin is based on interviews with hundreds of insiders, a couple hundred insiders inside the White House, inside the Democratic Party, who knew what was going on and knew that they were covering up for a president who was impaired to the point where he shouldn't have been in the office. That had to take place for the book to be out this week. Those interviews were being done before Joe Biden left office. Now, the media, Tapper, Thompson, are pretending like they're doing journalism now. Why didn't they report on this then?
Oh, okay. Here's a couple of interesting things. You're absolutely right on all of that. Jake Tapper, I think, and his PR machine are perhaps working with others in the Democrat caucus, we'll say, the media caucus. And that is why we're now seeing stories about Otto Penn.
Yep.
And we're also seeing the claim that Biden only was now diagnosed with cancer.
That's the other aspect of this, yeah.
Which is terrible. Look, cancer is a terrible thing. I don't wish that on anybody, whether I agree with him politically or not. But how can it have been gotten to the point where it is in his bones if it just was discovered?
No, it couldn't. In fact, there was earlier this week, Dr. Zeke Emanuel, who's an oncologist, which is a cancer specialist, was interviewed on Morning Joe on MSNBC. Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. MSNBC, very left-wing media outlet, very slanted. It's, who is it? I forget who refers to it. MSDNC, Democratic National Committee. They had Emanuel on, and Zeke Emanuel was the brother of Rahm Emanuel, who was Barack Obama's chief of staff during his first term, mayor of Chicago for 2 terms, being floated as a possible Democratic candidate for president. So Zeke Emanuel, on a Democrat-friendly morning show, said, oh, he's had this for a long time. There's no way this just came out. He's had this possibly as long as 10 years because prostate cancer is easily detectable. You find an antigen in the blood work that's done.
If you do the test.
If you do the test, right. And once it's discovered, it is usually treatable. And it takes a long time because it's typically a slow-growing cancer for it to metastasize and go into the bone. So Dr. Emanuel said this may have been in Biden's system for 10 years, which means given that Biden is well off, given that he was the vice president of the United States and then the president of the United States with access to the best state-of-the-art healthcare in the world, either, I think one of 3 scenarios. Either the doctors missed it, which seems highly unlikely. Number 2, they knew that he had it prior to him running in 2020 and kept it quiet, which, by the way, they did with their son, Beau Biden, who was the attorney general in Delaware. They knew he was dealing with very serious brain cancer. And even as they were treating him and keeping it quiet, he announced he was going to run for governor of Delaware, even as he was canceling public appearances because he could no longer speak coherently. So the Biden family's got a history of covering this up. Or number 3 is Joe Biden doesn't actually have cancer, but they just announced it last Sunday to change the narrative before this book came out.
Well, that is entirely possible. However, there was a moment a few years ago where Biden actually said he had cancer.
Yes.
I and others like me have cancer.
In 2022, yeah, and the corporate media just said, "Oh well," and the White House. Now he misspoke. He didn't mean that he's got cancer. Well, he did, And so I think answer number two is, the scenario number two is most likely. They knew he had it. They kept it quiet.
It's just tragic for many reasons. Biden has been the victim of elder abuse.
Yes, he has. We don't blame Joe, we blame Jill. And Hunter, who interestingly enough, according to this book that's come out, had so much influence behind the scenes. He was sort of a de facto chief of staff. He was kind of running the White House on the inside. And bear in mind, this is while Hunter Biden was being investigated for tax fraud. He was being investigated for lying on his gun permit.
Yes. And I want to bring up something that you, the listener, may not be aware of. You mentioned Rahm Emanuel.
Right.
And Zeke. Is that his other brother's name? Well, there's another brother named Ari Emanuel.
Right.
He is the head of William Morris Endeavor, which is the big agency for Hollywood types.
Right.
The big agency for Hollywood actors and singers.
Yeah, the Emanuels are power players.
They run media and entertainment.
Yeah.
And in some cases, government.
And managed to round up a lot of Hollywood support for Joe Biden, but then also for Kamala Harris when Biden finally dropped out.
Wasn't Rahm Emanuel still part of the... How long was he with the Obama administration?
I think just the first term, and then he left to run for mayor of Chicago. I think it's interesting that this has all come out, though, that the book, again, has come out so quickly because, as we know from going through the process of writing, editing, and getting books published through Defender Publishing, if we were to turn in a manuscript today, the physical copies of the book wouldn't be out for 4 to 6 months.
Who represents Jake Tapper?
I don't know. There are those.
Let me look that up.
There are those who believe that Jake Tapper is an intelligence asset in the same way that Anderson Cooper is an intelligence asset.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But the fact that this is coming out now and it makes the Democratic Party look so bad, complicit in the elder abuse of, it was like a 4-year-long series based on Weekend at Bernie's. We're going to prop this guy up and walk him around like a puppet and pretend that he's doing these things. The book, Original Sin, Tapper and Thompson, says that there were 5 White House aides who basically made the decisions and decided what was going to get signed by the Otto Penn. Biden was not doing it himself. And again, if Mike Johnson's correct in his story, I have no reason to believe that he's lying. Joe Biden really didn't know that his administration had put a freeze on liquefied natural gas exports to Europe at a time when Europe was paying a premium to get that gas to replace what was coming in from the Nord Stream pipeline. So it's almost as though the players inside the Democratic Party, the Democratic deep state, if you will, is now getting its revenge on the Biden family for scuttling their chances of winning the White House in 2024. Because Biden stayed in too long, and then when he dropped out, instead of doing what Barack Obama wanted, which was to just step back and then hold an open primary at the Democratic National Convention last summer, 30 minutes after announcing his withdrawal from the race, Biden endorsed Kamala Harris because the Obamas reportedly believed that Kamala couldn't win, and they were right.
Amen to that.
So what it seems to me, and I'm guessing here, I'm speculating, it appears as though the Democratic Party is getting even with the Bidens for costing them the White House in 2024. But really, when you go back 15 years, Barack Obama brought this all on himself. He's the one who angered Donald Trump so much at that White House Correspondents' Dinner in 2011 by mocking Trump and Trump's questioning of Barack's birth certificate, that he motivated Trump to say, I'll show him, I'll run for president, and I'll win.
Well, it's also funny because right now, one might say that Barack doesn't really have a horse in the race. at this moment.
No, at this point he doesn't.
Probably thinking about what person can I run against J.D. Vance.
Yeah.
But right now, Michelle Obama has a podcast where she spends the entire time moaning about how terrible her life is.
Yeah.
Good grief. What is this? Oh, okay. Is this what people on the left do?
Yeah.
Complain about how terrible their lives are.
Well,
I have to live in a gated community. I have to have multiple houses. It's so hard. Being First Lady, we had to pay for our own food.
We had to pay when we took the kids on White House Air Force One. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. It's that victim mentality that is ingrained in.
Well, it's ingrained in certain individuals, and many of them tend to be left-leaning, and that is a current popular way to attract followers. But she's being lampooned.
Right.
On social media. I mean,
she has no self-awareness.
None.
It's like, look, you got a $14 million house in Martha's Vineyard. Just sit down.
Yeah.
Sit this one out. You really don't have a reason to complain.
My gosh.
Your life proves the lie of this victimhood narrative.
One of them was, look, as a wife and mother, as a woman, and I'm paraphrasing, I can't say anything if I'm having a bad day. I'm not allowed to. The people around me should, but black women deal with this. Black women, we're not allowed to say how we're really feeling, that we're having a bad day, that we need some help. We're not allowed to. And I thought, first of all, you're a wealthy woman.
Yeah.
And skin color has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
All women go through stuff that's difficult. All men go through stuff that's difficult. For goodness sake, stop whining.
Yeah.
Why is your podcast a wine fest?
Yeah. It makes no sense.
And is there wine involved with this
Might
wine
be.
fest? Yeah, and I don't know why that is.
Made from sour grapes.
Well, very good, very good.
But it, again, is this mentality that is ingrained in people who come through colleges that are steeped in critical theory, and not just critical race theory, but critical theory, which is Marxism, the belief that there's always an oppressor and the oppressed. But if you're living in a home in Martha's Vineyard and you've got another $2.5 million mansion or whatever in Washington, D.C., and you're complaining about how oppressed you are, it's like, I'm sorry, you have zero self-awareness and zero clue what it's like for most people living in America today.
Stop pretending that you understand what the average person on the street is thinking and feeling.
Come see the violence inherent in the system. Help, I'm being repressed. Reference to Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh, gosh.
It is a joke. It is a joke. But it's the same thing Meghan Markle's doing with her podcast.
Oh, I know.
Look at me, I'm so poor. I just want to, maybe one final note here, and we'll be quick about this, just express our deep sorrow for that young couple in Washington, D.C., at the staffers from the Israeli embassy there.
Absolutely. There are details coming out about the shooting that they're just horrific. It wasn't one shot and they're dead. It was shot after shot, and the young woman
he emptied
was
a clip,
crawling away, trying to get away from him.
And he shot him in the back. Mm-hmm. He shot him, allegedly, we have to say. Elias Rodriguez, the alleged shooter.
Who describes himself as being a socialist. And an anti-Semitic individual at that.
Right.
And who is espousing many of the political positions that you just discussed.
Right.
This Marxist idea, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, she posted to X how terrible it was that these two individuals were shot.
Right.
And yet she's been spewing venom against Israel and espousing Marxism.
Right. Well, this young man, the alleged shooter from Chicago.
Allegedly, we have to say.
Alleged, yep. He got a degree at University of Illinois, Chicago, and he was affiliated with a group that has a presence at the campus of UIC. that is a socialist organization. And they posted within hours on social media that we have nothing to do with him. He was affiliated with one of our branches in 2017, but we haven't had any contact with him for 7 years. We deny any responsibility or any connection with the shooting in D.C. And yet, when you look at some of the posters that they're still putting out there, one of their posters, great big letters, it says eliminate Zionists, not eliminate Zionism, eliminate Zionists.
Exactly.
So this young couple, Yaron Lishinsky and Sarah Milgram. Sarah Milgram was from Kansas, so she's an American.
And by the way, they're both Messianic.
Lishinsky, and that's the other thing. Both of them are Messianic Jews. Both of them are Christians or were Christians, so we know at least they are with the Lord now.
They are.
And here's the other thing about that. The fact that the Israeli embassy had Christians working for them in Washington, D.C.
Do you want a chew stick?
Oh, yeah. Grace says, yeah, chew stick. Let me get off the couch. The fact that the Israeli embassy had Christians working on the staff representing the nation of Israel kind of puts to the lie the idea that Israel oppresses Christians. That is a talking point that I've heard from alleged Christians, we have to say, who claim that Christians in Israel are abused, are oppressed, are discriminated against, are spit on in the streets. Sorry, we know Messianics who live in Israel, and that's not the case.
That is absolutely not true.
Now, there is pushback against those who evangelize in Israel.
It's still legal, though.
It is still legal. It's discouraged. But given the 2,000-year history of animosity between professing Christians and Jews, who were often lumped in with Muslims when it came to the relations between Christians and Muslims. For example, when Ferdinand had Isabella in the 1490s kicked all the Muslims out of Spain, the Jews were lumped in with that because they were not Christian, and they'd had a 700-year history of Muslims pretending to convert and then rising up and killing their neighbors. So anyway, there's a long history of that animosity between Jews and Christians, and so many Jews don't know Christians, and they kind of lump us all together and think, okay, all of you who forced us to leave Europe, forced us to leave Russia, you're just like them. And on the other side of the coin, you've got Christians who don't know Jews and say, you're the ones who are spitting on Christians in the street. You know, the enemy, the fallen realm, is using that wedge to try to drive us apart.
That is exactly it. When the Lord says that in the last days, ethnos would be at war with ethnos.
Exactly.
That is tribe with tribe, and we are seeing that rise up now. And oftentimes, the individuals who are spewing venom against whatever other group of others, they very rarely actually know anything about those others. They've not spent time with them, talked to them, and the truth is, when you actually do get to know the others, quote unquote, you find that they're just like you.
Yeah. No, I've had people push back on social media when I posted something positive about Israel, saying, well, don't you know that these areas are open-air prisons? It's like, what are you talking about?
We've been there, they're not.
For example, when we've gone to Hebron, I had a fellow post, don't you know Hebron, there's like a fence around Hebron, it's an open-air prison. It's like, no, the area that's fenced is the area around the Jewish quarter of Hebron to protect them from their Arab neighbors because of the violent attacks against the Jews in that area around the Cave of the Patriarchs.
When we were there one time, there were gunshots fired.
Yeah.
And our guide pulled us all very close, and he was armed.
Yeah.
And he was ready to defend us. But it turned out they were just celebrating a wedding or something.
Yeah. Got us out of the line of sight of nearby buildings. And in fact, we walked through Hebron, went to the archaeological dig, the city that Abraham would have seen.
It's a beautiful city.
Almost 4,000 years ago, right. And nobody hassled us, nobody bothered us.
No.
But again, the people who are saying things like this, Gaza was an open-air prison. No, it wasn't. Just tell me, in other words, tell me you don't know any Jews without telling me you don't know any Jews.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Tell me you've never been to Israel without telling me you've never been to Israel.
Right. So we are grieving for the families of those two young people. That young man, Lashinsky, was going to propose to Sarah. They were going to Jerusalem
I know. He had
this
the
coming
ring.
week. He had the ring. They were going to get married. Messianic Jews, followers of Jesus Christ. And now they've gone home to be with the Lord.
Yeah.
But look, this is what globalizing the Intifada looks like. And it has come to the United States. It's come to the capital of the United States. This is what anti-Jewish sentiment is bringing home. And these kids who are chanting this, free, free Palestine on college campuses across the country, this is what it's leading to. And, and you're right, this is the fulfillment of Matthew 24, ethnos against ethnos.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tomorrow morning we talk about First Enoch in our weekly study of the Bible. This, of course, Enoch not in the Bible, but it helps to understand what was in the mind of the apostles during the first century because they were very familiar with First Enoch.
Absolutely. And many of you had asked us if we would eventually study that book. And so that's why the last Sunday of every month we spend on First Enoch.
Yep. And then coming up this week on Unraveling Revelation, it is Carl Gallups as our special guest. That'll drop on Monday.
Oh, yeah.
He talks more about the Paleo-Hebrew and how the gospel message is encoded in Scripture right from Genesis 1:1, based on the shape of the original letters of Hebrew.
You may be hearing the tap-a-tap of little doggy feet. Gloria has a toy.
And she's
running around.
Yeah.
She's very much still a puppy.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, that's coming up. And again, if you've got our app, gilberthouse.org/app, pidradio.com/app, you'll get notifications when new programs drop. And until next time.
One more thing to say, and that is if you have been wondering, Derek's 5 and 10 wasn't on yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Because Derek, he'd already done a lot of things in the day, and he does tire easily. So I said to him, because he said, I'm going to go do this. And I said, why don't you look really tired. Why don't you just sit down and, rest?
Yeah, I go to bed a lot earlier than I used to, and I sleep a lot longer than I used to.
Your body's fighting something, so
Right.
it is tiring. But yeah, you will return to 5 and 10 on Tuesday because Monday is a holiday.
Yes, the Memorial Day holiday here in the United States. So back on Tuesday with that. So yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. And again, the doctor's thinking that this is now a form of lupus that I'm dealing with. And so we'll see. We're looking for a treatment that does not involve long-term use of powerful steroids.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of, no.
Yeah, do not want to go that route. And a treatment plan that doesn't result in me weighing 545 pounds.
That would be really good too. I would love you no matter what.
More to love.
I think you'd just be so cute. But it's unhealthy.
No,
and
that is true. Feeling good at the weight I'm at right now, and things have stabilized over the last few days. So, it is not continuing. This is not alarming, but it is not unusual when you start on testosterone like that.
So download our app and also go to gilberthouse.org/calendar, I think. Is it calendar?
Yep, that's it.
And you'll see where we're going to be and when.
Yes, because just a few weeks we'll be in Indianapolis, suburban Indianapolis, for the Mysteries of the Bible Verse
Carmel,
conference.
Indiana.
Right. In fact, one of the other speakers besides you, me, and Carl Gallups, we got all of these speakers showing up on our shows here lately. Micah Van Huss has been the guest on the Bible's Greatest Mysteries the last couple of weeks, talking about his first book, Ancient Cities and the Gods Who Built Them. And in the episode that we just released yesterday, he talks about Mount Olympus, how that relates to Psalm 82, God in the Council of the Gods, in the Divine Council, but also talks about, we did Atlantis last week. This week was about Babel and the ancient city of Eridu in Sumer and how they're connected and how our distant ancestors may have learned arts of writing and metalworking
from
the Watchers. So,
and while you're at gilberthouse.org, go to /store. Derek and I don't ship out physical property anymore, but you can also, you can find where you can go to get digital copies. You can see where you can stream our videos that we've done, but you can also go to the Light Hive Creations link, and it will take you to where you can get hats for GHTV or for Armored Sheep or do we have any VFTV? Don't think we do.
We don't.
But
PID
we've got
Radio.
GHTV and Red Wing Saga and Armored Sheep T-shirts.
Also PID Radio.
Yeah, PID Radio too. So you can get these things there at Light Hive Creations. The link is there at gilberthouse.org/store, and you can support young musicians by doing that.
Absolutely. Oh, the other thing too, while you're there, click the link that says specials, because that will take you to the Skywatch TV store, where you can get special offers on our books.
And they do ship the product.
Yes, they do. And that also supports the work at Whispering Ponies Ranch, which is open again in 2025.
Yep.
Last year had to close because the insurance company that was providing the liability insurance just pulled the policy without any warning.
Yeah, but the Lord provided.
Lord provided, so the ranch is open again this year. Children in the foster care system through Royal Family Kids will be bringing children back again beginning in just a couple of weeks.
Yep.
So the camp will be open again this summer, and you can support the work there by taking advantage of these special deals on our stuff and others.
Oh, yeah. And while you're
at the Skywatch TV store.
the Skywatch TV store website, you can see the phone number where you can contact them, or you can email them, and you can ask them, is there a way I can directly support
Yes.
Whispering Ponies Ranch?
Absolutely. That is such an important work. Oh, and we almost forgot to mention, we should have mentioned this right up front. Congratulations to Joe Horn and Brittany Jackson.
Oh, yes! The telly!
Right. Last fall, they released a 6-part docuseries called Rescue Us about why there's a need for Whispering Ponies Ranch. This is about the systemized abuse of children, how children are trafficked, and why there's
and
such a
that word
need.
could get us canceled, but we're going to say it anyway.
Another reason to get our app. That 6-part docuseries received 2 Bronze Telly Awards, just announced this past week, one for limited series and one for documentaries.
Yep.
So Brittany Jackson did all of the editing work on that, putting it all together. So congratulations to them for a job well
Both of
done.
them, very,
but
very well
it's
done.
because the information is so important. You can buy a copy of the DVDs, or you can stream it from Amazon.
Yeah.
And again, the series called Rescue Us. If you want to go to Amazon and search for it, you can stream it immediately. Watch it with your family. Watch it with your church group, your Bible study. It's really important information because you will be shocked at how many children are caught in this vicious cycle of demonic abuse.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it's good that that information is getting out there. Until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and for Grace and Glory. Bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @PID Radio, or the PID Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.